This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and I've met this guy at the morning show boot camp, and he's a very good guy from the KVJ show. Kevin Rolston is on the show. What's up, bro?
Hey, not much, man. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. Are you going to the morning show boot camp this year?
Absolutely, yes. I am going to be handing off the Kid Craddock Award to another deserving show.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't been in about 4 years, and my aunt lives in Austin. So me and my mom are going to fly in, hang out for about 2-3 days with her. She might hang out with her longer, but then I'll be at the boot camp Wednesday through Saturday.
Okay. That sounds like a hoot. That's a good time.
I know. I'm very excited. How has everything been with the show? One thing I've always liked about your show, I'm obviously a radio geek. I listen to a lot of shows, and a lot of top 40 shows, they all kind of have the Elvis Duran brand, which is fine, but it kind of like if you listen to one show in this city that's just on in one city, they kind of sound too much like Elvis Duran, and you guys do kind of a top 40 vibe morning show. But what I've always liked is that you guys are kind of your own brand. Like you do your own original segment. It doesn't feel like you copy from other people.
No, we don't really. I think the one thing that we've always wanted to be is unique personalities. And, yeah, there was kind of an era that happened there for a bit in radio when it came to syndication. And they wanted a lot of shows to do the bits that have kind of been tried and tested.
Yeah.
And they work, no doubt about it. So they're not wrong and all that, but it wasn't really a style that we could do, and our show wasn't really structured to. I think the shows I like the most are shows that are personality driven, and they're very unique characters, and they're true to who they are. And we've always been that way. And when I hired the cast that I have on the KVJ show, I wanted really to just find very entertaining, funny, lightning rod characters that live a crazy life that generates all the content you'd ever need. And so for me to fabricate content, it's not been as necessary because of the people that we have on with Ian, Jason, and even our producer, Denny's, all very funny people with very diverse backgrounds and personalities, but all really kind of share the same sense of humor, which I think is important because you need to kind of agree on what you think is funny. And so we're a room of people that are entertained and laugh at and with each other.
Now, how did you meet everybody from your show?
I knew Virginia through a mutual radio friend, and I was hired first to build the show. And the best thing that ever happened to me was when I was in Kansas City for 2 years. I think I was on about 6 different variations of morning shows. We were flipping it about every 3 or 4 months. And I had a lot of people that just didn't work, and it wasn't the right fit. And what we had was a program director that was trying to put people together rather than having someone that you trusted to build the show and then hire the right people for them and what their vision of their show was. And literally, when I took a step back from Kansas City and West Palm Beach, I was given that opportunity to hire who I thought was best. And it was a blessing for me because I hired Virginia first, and we were together for 5 years before we did kind of an open call search and found Jason, who has now been with us for 20 years. But it took a little while to find that third voice and get somebody that truly meshed.
What are some of the best parts about your team?
They're funny. They got big hearts. And they really make a lot of mistakes and do interesting things in life. And it's our flaws that really endear us to the audience, because nobody out there is perfect. And anybody who tries to act perfect, they're going to see through that. And so we're very vulnerable, very honest with what we do, and very self-deprecating. And that fits into our style.
I have worked with a ton of shows, and the ones that want everything to be perfect is very off-putting because you're almost on eggshells. Because, like, let's say a sweeper doesn't air or something really small and the person freaks out, it kind of ruins the vibe. Like, it is radio. You're talking into a microphone for a living. It is supposed to be fun.
No, the cardinal sin is not misfiring a sweeper or having dead air or something like that. To me, the cardinal sin of radio is being boring.
Yeah.
And, when you do something like that that's out of the ordinary, that's not perfection, that's when it stands out and people now strain to listen to the radio. And that's ultimately what you want to do. When you achieve perfection in radio, it becomes background noise. And there's nothing that is pulling the listener in to pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, people can relate to things going wrong because maybe someone woke up and their kid was being a brat in the morning, or they got a flat tire and they're not having a perfect morning. And then when they hear the big KVJ show play two things at once or whatever, they're like, oh, I can relate to these people,
Yeah, absolutely. People really want to feel better about themselves, and that's why they dial up a lot of the entertainment that they do. And when you're setting a low bar that they can easily get over, then they're like, you know what? I'm not such a mess up after all.
Now, you're from the Midwest, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Ohio.
I'm from Illinois, and I worked in Cleveland for a little bit. So I definitely, there's a certain Midwest edge that I can always tell when I'm in Florida, because I'm in Tampa. I can always tell when people are from the Midwest. There's a certain, almost like bond. Like one time I was at a bar, and there was this dude. Me and him were just hitting off. We're talking. We're getting along. And he was born in the same hospital as me. He was about 7 years younger than me. But there's always that connection, Kevin, where you can tell when you're talking to someone in Florida if they're from the Midwest.
Yeah, and everybody in Florida is from somewhere else, so there's a good chance you're not going to see any natives.
Now, I asked Rod Ryan this on Monday, and he said he gets recognized a lot, but it's not like the Beatles. But every time he gets recognized, he appreciates it in public. How often, like let's say you're at Publix, how often do you get recognized in public? And is there ever any chance that you kind of get sick of it? Like, are you ever like kind of tired on a Saturday morning and someone's like, oh my God, that's Kevin from KVJ?
I never once have gotten tired of it. I don't get upset. I love it. Don't get sick of it. To me, it's just an affirmation that you made a connection with somebody.
Yeah.
And it's very flattering, and it lets you know when you're hitting the mark. So I love it all the time. To what Rod's saying, where we are with radio, I think it's a great place to be because the level of fame is to a point where it's flattering and it's nice. And you have a lot of people that may recognize you but not say anything. And when they do say something, they typically just want a photo or to buy you a beer or something that's friendly. You can still leave your house. You can still do things. You do have to realize, though, that you are a public figure. And so you always have to be aware of what's going on. You want to try to look the part. You want to try to act the part, not be a fool when you're out in public.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a really small price to pay anymore with the proliferation of cameras on everybody's phone and how you can post video of anybody you want. I think a lot of people feel kind of the same way. None of us are completely anonymous, and they're not going to have to deal with possibly something happening in public coming back to bite us in the butt.
So there was one time about 7 years ago, I was in the last part of my relationship with my ex-fiance, and we weren't really doing well. And she was in that phase where, like, she didn't have patience with me. So we were at St. Pete Beach, and I wore a flannel and jeans to the beach. So then I went into the bathroom to change out of it into my swim attire. We go to the beach for 2 to 3 hours, and we do our thing. And then she was in a rush, and she goes, oh, just put the flannel on and wear the bathing suit. I go, no, babe, I need to go to the bathroom. And she just was so adamant about, we got to get to Publix. We got to get to Publix. Now, I'm decently known in Tampa, but I'm no Calta or Bubba Love Sponge or MJ, but I'm known enough. Of course, the one time someone sends a picture to Mike Calta, Kevin, is me and my ex were at Publix ordering a pub sub, and they're making it, and she's got her arms crossed, all annoyed, and it looks like I have nothing underneath because I'm a tall guy, and I was wearing a long flannel shirt. And of course, the one time I get recognized in public, never when I'm, Kevin, it's never when I'm dressed up. Now if I go to Wawa at 1 a.m, I always dress up.
Yeah.
I am so afraid of that happening again. I swear to God.
Yeah, but it's a good story. It's a good story. That's how I look at anything that happens like that.
Oh, yeah. It was hilarious. It was just, I'll never forget when somebody sent me the picture, and it was almost like voyeuristic in a way. Like, I was like, I could almost feel, I always know when someone recognizes me because I'm tall, and they do the up-down thing, almost like checking out a girl where they're trying to figure out, where have I, do you ever have that where you're like in line and you're like, someone's recognizing me right now?
Yeah, I mean, you get that. You'll get the weird side eye and that kind of stuff, and you assume it might be happening, but you don't know for sure. The thing that I love is when somebody waves at you, and you're like, "Hey, yeah, I'm famous radio guy," and they're actually waving at the person behind you. Yeah, that's definitely happened a lot.
I've had that happen a lot too. Now, for me growing up, I liked Eddie and Jobo. I liked Opie and Anthony. Those were a lot of the shows that influenced me to go into radio. Was there any like specific radio show that kind of caught your ear growing up?
You know, oddly enough, I wasn't a huge radio nerd growing up, much like yourself.
Yeah.
I kind of fell into it and discovered it. The ones that, you know, grabbed me early is Dave Ryan is one of the few that, you know, kind of made me fall in love with it and say, okay, this is something I could do. He was on 97.9 WNCI in Columbus at the time, a big, huge, legendary station.
Yes.
That was there not too far from where I grew up, and just really loved his attitude and started thinking, hey, maybe I could do that. And then as I started to get into radio, I started to listen around to some other shows, and of course Howard Stern had been big, and discovered him, and you know, loved his style and how he didn't try to force his humor. He was just naturally funny. And there were a lot of shows that I was listening to at the time because I loved the comedy part of it and the humor. But the one thing that really took me back when I started listening to a lot of the radio shows was how forced the comedy was. And I think it might have been part of it was the era. Part of it was probably the shows I tried to listen to, but it just felt gimmicky. And Stern was very natural. And so it kind of let me know, hey, just, you know, be yourself and just let the comedy kind of flow from there. And so I got a lot of ideas and style. Holistically, I, you know, used a lot of things from the earlier Stern years, probably in the mid-'90s to late 90s, which was when I was most influenced by his show.
Now, have you ever caught another show taking one of your ideas or one of Virginia's ideas or Jason's?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if caught is the right word, but I've noticed that they have, and you know, that happens. To me, I'm very flattered by it, so it's not something that bothers me. And I've been on the other end of somebody trying to say that I stole one of their bids.
Yeah, it was one of my old bosses.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. So, yeah, so they've done that, and oddly enough, I'd never heard their show. I didn't, you know, never heard of them, really.
Yeah, and, dude, I'm very jealous that you work in West Palm in the way that I left that job for a reason. Like this whole, I'm pretty outspoken on my podcast, and I try to not say things that are too crazy on social media, but I'm an outspoken guy. I still listen to Howard Stern and that, but the whole radio war thing, I don't know. I think Bubba created it here in Tampa. Like this whole radio war thing, like it's really phased out. But when I moved here, Kevin, everybody was at war, dude. It was so lame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Tampa's kind of the tone of that market. That's kind of the way it was. And yeah, I think I've had every show in Tampa come after me
Bubba?
at one point or another. I don't know. Maybe Bubba. I've heard Calhead has said some things.
Of course he has.
The person I was talking about in particular was MJ. And, you know, but yeah, it is what it is. I don't really think our audience especially cares too much. It's not our style. It's not what we do. And so I don't really concern myself with it too much.
Well, here's something that's kind of funny. I've always wanted to tell you. Whenever I would be on a dating app, if it was Hinge or Bumble, and a girl was from West Palm, and she was between the age of being born in 1990 to 2001-ish, maybe early 80s too. Anyway, any like millennial and elder Gen Z girl that was from West Palm, when they asked me what I did, and I told them radio and whatnot, every single one of them said, oh, is it like KVJ? It's crazy. Every single girl.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, that's a big compliment. I mean, that's, I think, what you try to do. I was inspired when I started going to boot camp and understanding radio was to get in and really trying to own your town and marry your market was the thing that they talked about a lot. And,
Jeff and Jer said that.
Yeah, and that's where I got that from. And when I got here, I really wasn't planning on staying in West Palm that long. I thought I'd be here maybe a couple of years like I had been my other stops, but I really fell in love with it when I got here. And I said, gosh, there's no place I would rather live than if I can continue doing what I'm doing in a place that I love. And I'm going to stay with it. So, yeah, to have that and have KVJ be the recall for radio shows in this market, there's no better compliment.
Now, how often do you talk to Jason and Virginia during the day? I've worked on some radio shows where I was in almost too much contact with my coworkers, and I worked with some where it's like, I will see you in 19 and a half hours. So what's the communication like?
I think it's when necessary. We want to let it breathe and, kind of unplug and let things happen organically in your life. And I'll get an email in the morning that just kind of lays out a little bit of what they did and some things that they saw and get some ideas for some stories to plug it into the show. But that's really about it. And we'll text a little bit if there's something going on. I might send them an email saying, hey, we're going to do this bit tomorrow. Just start thinking on it. And so that's it. But it's very casual. I don't want to be obtrusive. So when we leave the station, it's go live your life, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.
Now, you guys aren't too edgy, but you push the boundaries while being family friendly. But was there ever an era in your life, bro, where you got an FCC fine?
No, I don't think we've had any FCC fines. We've been edgy, and for a hot AC, which is the format we're on,
yeah,
we're edgy enough, and then we do an after the show, which is unrated, and I think it's more natural to who we really are, and that's actually really filthy. So that can get pretty X-rated. So we do, and we've got a mixture of an audience that does. There are people that want to listen to KVJ with their kids, and we get that on the radio at least till 8 a.m. And then we get a little bit more adult, but still in the PG-13 variety. And then, we get into the podcast part. So it's kind of interesting how our tone shifts throughout the morning in the three phases of show we do, more the family show, more the adult show, and then the pirate show.
Now, has there ever been something that's happened in your personal life with a friend or family member where they were like, hey, Kev, can you not talk about that on air?
Yeah, you'll get that comment every now and then. Somebody will say, hey, this is not for air. You're like, okay, you respect it. And if there's something that I think is questionable and we haven't addressed it, I'll, mention it to a person and say, hey, I was going to bring this up. Do you have an issue? I'm not going to burn you. And
yeah,
we don't believe in that. I don't believe in using what we have to. In a sense, it's unfair. We've got a megaphone, and to put somebody on blast or do something like that, it's kind of an unfair fight and or a bad situation. And so there's nothing that we ever want to do with our show. We're hoping to make people's lives better and have more fun in life. We're not here to hurt feelings and tear people down or ruin anybody's life. So we're very sensitive about that with other people, and obviously everybody on the show too. That's one understood law. Say you are never required to do anything that's going to cause any hardships in your personal life.
Man, it is crazy when I talk to friends from the morning show boot camp and even people that work in Florida but are on different coasts of just how different West Palm is. I've talked to Paul Castranovo and how different Miami is. It is just funny how Tampa Bay radio is just in its own bubble of like 1990s shock jockery, and the rest of Florida seems to have adapted, man. It's fascinating when I talk to people, like even like Woody out in Los Angeles. When I see him at the boot camp, he's always amazed by what goes on in Florida radio. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, Tampa is kind of unique like that, and like I said, not every show that's on the dial there is come after KVJ for one thing or another at some point. And yeah, I just understand it's the style what it is, and it must work, I guess, in that market. And that's just kind of the tone and style. It is rather unique because I'm not familiar with many other markets that react that way, but that's just the way the market's always been, and I guess it works. So, that's why they do it.
Now, do you watch basketball at all?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
What do you think about what happened with the Heat and Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm a Heat fan. Enjoyed the championships a lot more than I enjoy this year. But, I just went to a couple Heat games last week, actually. Oddly enough, not in Miami. I was somewhere else and saw them in Oklahoma City and Dallas.
Nice.
And, still root for him. I hate what happened with Jimmy. I got my own opinions about that. But I'm sorry to see the breakup happen the way that it does, or the way that it did.
It's funny. I like Jimmy, but it seems to be there's something where it kind of happens on every team. I think this, with what happened with the Heat, was probably the worst example, but I'm curious to see how him and Draymond get along, man. That's going to be the real test.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's kind of a lesson. You look at what happens in professional basketball, and you look at what happens with shows, and there's always a chemistry you got to put together. You got to be a team, and you got to be able to work off of each other. And that's what you just never know. Just because you put a bunch of all-stars together, I've seen that in radio too, where they put together a show that's talents from other markets that all had great success, and they get together, and for some reason they're not a good team and it doesn't work. So that's just the weird thing about it. You never know how the chemistry is going to be.
Well, and you know what's crazy? Growing up, I first heard Opie and Anthony in 2006, and it was funny how that show, and I believe they went to war with you guys, right?
Yeah, they came. It was kind of an interesting relationship with them. They've come after us too. I mean, like I said, it's a long list of shows that have come after KVJ.
Well, it's funny with them because I was in 6th grade when I first heard them, and I listened, and when I graduated high school, my present was a Sirius Radio. So I have a nostalgic feeling about that show, but it's absolutely crazy. When I was listening, bro, in high school, I would skip lunch to listen and save the $8 and use it on beer on the weekend. And I would just sit in the library and listen to like Opie and Anthony. And the thing was, I thought they were best friends, and then they ended up hating each other the whole time. I've always found that interesting, is that like, yeah, you're making millions, but can you imagine despising the people you worked with? That's not healthy.
No, I think it'd be tough. I'm very fortunate that not only do I love what my show members do on the air, but we truly love each other off the air. We're very much like family and spend a lot of time together, and we look at that. We don't consider us to be anything but family, and so I'm really blessed. And it's just, to me, it's the pairings, because I have the perspective of being on shows when I was in Kansas City that did not like each other, and I know what that's like, and that's really rough. So that's why KVJ to me is unique, and I consider myself to be as blessed as I am.
The other thing I want to ask you, did you get to have any of the barbecue in Kansas City while you were there?
Yeah, of course, man. You got to do barbecue in Kansas City.
How was it?
That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's one of the signature things they have. Kansas City's a great town, great people. The food's awesome. You're going to go there, and in the wintertime, you're going to pack on a ton of weight and look terrible, but, it's a great city.
I got fat when I was in Cleveland because it was so cold out. All I did was drink beer.
Yeah, same. That's what I was like in Kansas City. Beer, and I went because somebody told me about that. I think it was the Atkins diet or whatever it was at the time, where the concept was you don't really eat carbs, and so I didn't really understand food. So I'm like, okay, so if it's like meat and stuff like that, I'll just eat a ton of barbecue, and I wash it down with beer, not really thinking about the carbs I was getting from that. Packed on 35 pounds in like 2 weeks.
It's weird. When you're fat in the Midwest, it looks okay. But when you're fat in Florida, dude, it looks different. It's weird.
It's a sliding scale. I was never fat in the Midwest, but I was Florida fat in the Midwest, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, you have a real problem if you're in the Midwest and they say you're fat, because then you're fat. So it's kind of a sliding scale. I I was, I was Florida fat in the Midwest, but I was heading towards Midwest fat.
Now, I was a Bulls fan during the Derrick Rose era, and every single Bulls fan in Chicago was like, oh my God, the Miami Heat don't have any fans. Oh my God, they are fake. And now moving to Florida, I've met a lot of people that are Heat fans. What do you think about when people hate on Miami sports fans?
They're not really wrong. There's some diehards here, but that's the one thing. If you want to be in a great sports city, Miami's not it. It's not Boston. It's not New York. It's not Chicago. Even Cleveland, some of those towns. It's not that where people live and die, and you have to be really a fan of the hometown team to survive. You come to South Florida, you go to bars on a Sunday when the NFL's playing, may not see one Dolphins fan. So, that's kind of the way it goes around here.
Yeah, because it's funny. It reminds me of the Tampa Bay Rays fan base where it's almost like a cult following. Like there's the diehards that care, Kevin, but they get defensive if anybody says that they're not that popular. And it's like, well, it's popular amongst your friends group, but that doesn't mean it's popular,
Yeah. Florida's very unique. There's just so much that's going on. And sometimes when I go to those other cities, especially in the winter, and you realize, my gosh, they don't have a tenth of the stuff that we have to do here in South Florida, you start to understand that being so transient and you got beaches and a gazillion different things to do that could be more fun. So it makes sense, actually, when you break it down, why South Florida sports don't really have a great local organic fan base.
Now, before I let you go, Kevin, I want to ask you, and I love asking this, I end every interview by asking my guests this. How important is the Radio Hall of Fame to you?
Don't even think about it. I actually, until you mentioned, I wasn't really sure that they have one. I don't know. That's not a motivator for me or anything that I truly think about, but I'm aware of it, but I don't really ever give it thought.
It's funny. 50% of people, like a lot of time, and I'm not going to say any names, but a lot of times the really big cocky guys are like, oh, it's the most important thing ever. And then the laid back dudes like you that would be fun to get a beer with, and we have, I'm saying the people that don't take radio so seriously seem to be happier and don't care as much, but the ones that's all they have, they're the ones that are diehard about it.
Yeah, well, I'm in radio not for radio people. I'm in radio for the people in my community and that are in my audience. And that's not really dictated when it comes to the Radio Hall of Fame. So those kind of awards, not really that obsessed with. I would rather do things that make a mark with the people that I do a show for. Now,
Kevin, for people that are in West Palm Beach, they can listen on 97.9 WRMF over the radio waves. But if they're not in West Palm Beach and they want to check out your show, how can they listen to the KVJ show?
Well, I mean, we've got every possible way when it comes to YouTube, streaming, Spotify, wherever your podcast. So, yeah, we try to be as accessible as possible, and I think all the major platforms where you're going to find any entertainment, you're going to find KVJ. Just go to that platform and hit KVJ, and we should hopefully pop up.
Well, bro, and I waited until 29 minutes and 46 seconds to kiss your ass, but you're one of the few morning shows that I legitimately like. There's some shows that I'm friends with that I don't think they're okay, but I just love how authentic and real you guys are. And you guys always put me in a good mood. Like if it's kind of like it's been cloudy, I don't know if it's cloudy near you, but in Tampa, it's been like Cleveland and the sun has not been up. And putting on a show like you always makes my day. So thank you.
That's awesome. And to be fair, I feel like you kind of halfway kissed my ass through the entire interview, but I loved every second of it.
It's all good, man. You can definitely tell I'm a fan. Kevin, thank you for coming on Happy Hour. It's been a lot of fun, and I will see you at the morning show boot camp, my friend.
Can't wait to meet your mom, Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, bro. Now, if you want to hear Happy Hour, Let me describe it to you. It's very similar to the KVJ show, although I'm a little more outspoken than them. So go to every single major platform that has a podcast like you're doing right now and search Hoppe Radio, HOPPE Radio. It's a 1990s, 2000s type morning show in a podcast format. I play throwback hip hop and I talk a lot of smack. So once again, thanks to Kevin for calling in the Hoppe Hour, and check it out and spread the word.
Playing cruel pranks. Hoppe's hour almost done. Feels like robbery in banks. Ryan Hoppe on the mic, dropping wisdom in streams. Syndicated sorrow, now it's time to shatter dreams. Oh, the Hoppe Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilted rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. But the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppe like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shoutouts hit the street. But soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppe Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. But the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppe like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shoutouts hit the street. But soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppe Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. Oh, life's just so unfair. Every night like clockwork to a show. Now it's time to face the silence like a TV on snow. Ryan Hoppe held the mic with humor so divine. The void left in our hearts wider than a canyon line. Empty speakers, silent time coming to an end. Like a roller coaster stopping round the river's bend. Hoppe jokes and jabs, these are daily grind. Now silence louder than the thoughts we can't rewind. Oh, the Hoppe Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. The Hoppe Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.
RyanHoppeRadio.com.
And like that, he's gone.
Whenever we're going outside, all I smell is poop.
I'll kick you in the nuts and we'll call it a day.
Hoppe Hour is now over.
Hoppe Hour is now over.
Game over. This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.
Doors closing.